What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Got Next podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Baldwin, with my co-host, Donovan Moore.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right back at it, man.
Yes, sir. Ben and Bones, Nate Ash. Say what's up, brother.
All right, pleasure to see y'all. We're happy to get right back at it.
Yep. So we ranked the AFC yesterday, so today we will be ranking the NFC. So make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all of that type of stuff. And without further ado, let's get right into the episode.
Three-pointers. Outside jumper for three at the bucket.
All righty, so let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Everybody see?
Yes, sir.
All righty. So our first team for ranking the NFC today will be the Chicago Bears. Rookie QB Caleb Williams, man, and all the weapons that they got in the offseason. B, how do you feel about the Bears this season?
I'm going to categorize them in the deep playoff run potential just because I've been watching Caleb in the preseason. I know he's not going against starters necessarily, but, I mean, he's cooking. He looks like he has, like, I'm not calling him Patrick Mahomes, but he's got, like, Mahomes-esque qualities, the way he can just, like, roll out and just throw an accurate pass all over the place. And I just think he's a game changer. The Bears haven't had a good quarterback, like, their entire history. Like, when Jay Cutler is your all-time leading passer, that's when you know you've had a terrible history of QB. So I think Caleb's really a game changer. That's going to make the NFC North a really tough division. And I don't think they can make it to the Super Bowl this year, but I do think it's possible they could play in the NFC Championship if everything goes right.
I'm going to actually put the Bears in the I wouldn't bet the house on it category. The Bears have made a lot of improvements. They finished the season off strong last year with Justin Fields. But I feel like at the same time, just historically, the Bears have never really had that consistency. So on paper, it looks like they should be really good. But I'm also looking at the division they're in. You got the Lions, who are still there and pretty much have the same team coming back. The Packers, Jordan Love with his contract, and the Packers made some moves in the playoffs last year. And then just the overall NFC, I think the Bears should be improved. I just wouldn't bet the house on them just yet. I may need to see it for a season first. But on paper, they look like they could be an excellent team, honestly.
Sheesh. I do think that their ceiling is a deep playoff run, though, if I'm being honest. So we'll put them there. But I wouldn't bet the house on them making a deep playoff run. But I do think that's their ceiling, though. Like, the team itself just looks great on paper.
Receiving core, man.
Yeah, the receiving core is nuts. I mean, you got either Roma Dunze or Keenan Allen as your wide receiver 3, so that's a great situation already. Cole Kmet has kind of proven that he's a solid tight end in the league as well. So DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Rashawn Johnson, I think that they got like a 3-headed monster at running back as well, so they'll have to see what they have there. But yeah, I think that there is a solid opportunity for them to make a deep playoff run. Their division is difficult. I don't see them finishing better than the Lions or the Packers, so that's the only thing that gives me pause. But the roster's there, so I'll give it to them for right now. Pause. So next up, we have the Lions. They made it to the was it the divisional last year?
NFC Championship.
It's the championship. Oh yeah, that is true. That's facts. So I mean, do you think that they'll make it again this year?
I mean, I'd say they're Super Bowl or bust just because they were up 24-7 at halftime in the NFC Championship, and they look like they're bringing back the exact same team, except they got that. I'm trying to remember his name, that one lineman from the Ravens. So I mean, their offensive line was already like the strength of their team. So I think they should really go the distance this year, or else they haven't improved. If they don't make it back to the NFC Championship, then they're kind of going to be like what the Bills were after they made the AFC Championship, like Super Bowl expectations, but kind of underachieving. They're definitely going to be a playoff team. They're too talented not to, and they should win that division, I think. But I do think it's going to be very tight three-way contest between the Bears, Packers, and Lions. But it shouldn't be the Bears who win that division. It should be either the Lions or Packers. So I do think Super Bowl or bust for the Lions.
I agree with you, B. The Lions, NFC Championship run isn't enough for them anymore. They proved they can get there. They're not really the underdogs anymore, so to speak. And this is a Super Bowl or bust expectations for them. They are in a tough division, but I feel like they have the team to compete. So, and as you said, they were up 24-7 in the NFC Championship as well. So they have the talent to get there and win. So I feel like it has to be Super Bowl expectations for them.
Pretty sure Vegas has the Lions being a top 5 offense this year in the NFL, so I believe that will happen. I don't see why that wouldn't happen. They have weapons everywhere. I think Amon-Ra is going to take a leap this year. So, yep, Super Bowl or bust for the Lions. I agree with that. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. With some of their key acquisitions they made, they picked up Josh Jacobs. I know that was pretty big. I like that move for them. So, next up, a really good receiving core. Hopefully, Christian Watson can stay healthy. He may not, though. Likely won't. The way the seasons have gone. But how do you feel about the Packers?
I'm kind of torn between Super Bowl or bust or deep playoff run, but I think what was that?
What was that?
Yeah, definitely wasn't my screen, but I would put them at deep playoff run because people do need to remember that even though they did almost beat the Niners in the divisional round, they were 9-8 last year, and Jordan Love really didn't start cooking till like the end of the year. So I do think like people shouldn't hop on that bandwagon like too hard yet because he wasn't that good at the beginning of the year, and they were talking about maybe not resigning at the beginning of the year. So even though he does have like top tier QB potential, I don't think it's like been totally proven yet. So I do think they're very capable of a deep playoff run though.
Yeah, I agree. I think deep playoff run for the Packers as well. I mean, they were up 7 on San Francisco late in the game, and I think their kicker mixed like a clutch field goal that could have gave them an extra cushion. So the Packers were a kick away from maybe being in the NFC Championship against the Lions. So they have the talent. Josh Jacobs, as you mentioned, Mitch, was a great signing. They have a solid receiving core. They don't have one person in particular that stands out, but if Christian Watson stays healthy, they still got Dobbs and Wicks. So the Packers do have a solid team and a great coach as well. So I see deep playoff run for them.
Sorry, did y'all both say deep playoff run?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, move it there. I agree. I think I like Jordan Love this year in fantasy as well as in person. I think he'll have a solid leap here, especially after getting that contract extension. So he'll have some stuff to prove this year. And the Packers were already a pretty good team last year. So, I mean, I think that they've only improved. I don't see why they wouldn't be either the first or second in their division to finish the season. So last in this division is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I got a feeling I know where this team's going to go. So how do you feel about them, B?
They just have absolutely no chance. They're definitely going to come in last in that division, but it won't be. It will be like respectable last place because Kevin O'Connell's a good coach, and they still have Justin Jefferson, but probably no more. Probably like another 7-10 season. They just have had bad luck with QB over the last year, and hopefully, for them, JJ McCarthy comes back strong and is good. But with Sam Darnold, they're just in that division. They're just not going to win enough games to be good this year.
Yeah, I agree with you, B. They don't really have a shot. They have a tough division. We already have the other 3 teams in their division at minimum making a playoff run. So it comes down to quarterback play in the league, and the Vikings simply just don't have that. So I would say no chance for them.
Yeah, overall, it just sucks for the Vikings, man. You thought that you'd kind of restart the QB clock with JJ McCarthy this year, and then now you kind of just have a bridge year until you can see what JJ McCarthy has. It just resets the clock until next year. It's another extra season. So I don't know, man. I don't know how long Jay Jettis might actually be in Minnesota unless they figure out their QB situation pretty soon here. So next up, we have a division I'm very, very familiar with as I went to school in Carolina. So next up, man, we got the Atlanta Falcons. They made a lot of improvements, addition by subtraction at the very least, getting Arthur Smith up out of there. So, B, talk to me. How do you feel about this team?
You got to remind me of Arthur Smith, bro. How could you? I do think getting Raheem Morris as a head coach was a really good move for them. Even though he hasn't really proven to be like a good head coach yet, he's definitely was an elite D coordinator. It sounds like he's like Mike Tomlin and Sean McVay combined, like his personality and coaching style. So, I mean, you would think, that could make for a successful coach when you have a good roster. Bijan Robinson's obviously a beast. Kyle Pitts, I assume they're going to get more out of him than Arthur Smith got out of him. And Drake London, and they made some good moves on defense. Jesse Bates is one of the best players at his position. They got him last year, and then they just added Patrick Simmons, and they traded for Matthew Judon, who's like not like top tier defensive player, but like probably somewhere bottom of the next tier, which is good. So I don't think they have a lot of great players, but I think they have a lot of good players. And ultimately, like I usually say, you can only usually go about as far as your QB can take you. And let's face it, like Kirk Cousins isn't even he's good, but he's not even as good as Dak Prescott. So, and we see how hard it is for Dak Prescott to advance in the playoffs. So I got to put him in I wouldn't bet the house on it. I do think Kirk will do well coming back from his injury, but I still think like he's just one of those QBs who can't take you to the mountaintop. So even though I think it looks good on paper, and they definitely made improvements, they could win that division, but I wouldn't bet the house on them going that far in the playoffs.
I agree. I wouldn't bet the house on the Falcons as well, and it just simply comes down to Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. We've seen him for years. We know what he is. He'll give you great regular season stats. He could maybe win you a playoff game depending on matchup, but that's also a wild card as well. So I just wouldn't bet the house on the Falcons because I just simply don't trust Kirk Cousins. That's all it is.
Yeah, same here. I wouldn't bet the house on it. I think that they definitely raised their floor, but I mean, I don't know how much they raised their ceiling. I like Penix on this team. It'd be really cool if, like, not to hope for an injury. I'm not hoping for an injury, especially not a huge one or anything like that. Just tweak an ankle or something. I just want to see Penix a couple times during the year. Nothing crazy. But yeah, I feel like this team has a good future here. They're building on a lot of stuff, and it'll be interesting to see if Kyle Pitts has another shit season or not. That would be funny. Next up, we have the Saints. Still got Derek Carr at QB, so they got a hard cap on him. So, B, how do you feel about this team?
This is just like the most mid QB division ever. Like with Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, and Derek Carr, they're all kind of in the same league. But I do think Derek Carr, there's strong evidence that he's like the bottom one out of those three, especially in 2024. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying the Saints are bad. They could win 8 to 9 games, but Dennis Allen's their head coach still. Like, he's a good coordinator, but not a good head coach. They have Chris Olave's nice, I guess, and Alvin Kamara's on the downside of his career, and they got some good players on defense. But let's face it, they have no chance. Like, I'm not saying like they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, no chance, but they have absolutely no chance.
Yeah, the Saints are kind of an in-betweener for me because they're never bad enough to put them in the no chance category, but they're also not great enough for a deep playoff. So I would probably put the Saints in. I wouldn't bet the house on the category just because of their division. All of those teams, although the Falcons have made improvements, they're all kind of on that same, as you mentioned, be 8 to 9 win level for me, minus the Panthers. And I think the Saints do have a very solid defense at minimum. They have a solid defense. And let's just see how Derek Carr fares in his second year there. I wouldn't bet the house on him.
Yeah, I'm going to give him no chance. Which actually sucks in this division, man. You think you'd look at this and be like, yeah, this is a piece of cake. And it's just not. Because Derek Carr is not very good. Alvin Kamara, again, is aging, even though he gets a lot of the receiving work. His running is just cooked at this point. He's not a rusher at this point, or an effective one at that point. Yeah, and then Chris Olave, I feel like if you got Derek Carr throwing you the ball, I can't factor you in too much. It's just a bad offense, and the defense is decent, but not good enough. Especially in this division, they should be better than they are. So I'm going to give them no chance, unfortunately. They might have a chance to, I don't know, maybe win the division, but, I mean, the Buccaneers would have to be pretty bad. And then the Panthers, I feel like they got Deontay Johnson and a couple other things, so they could honestly just be better. I don't know. But, yeah, no chance for the Saints for me. But now we are on to the Panthers. So, B, how do you feel about Bryce Young and the second-year Panthers?
I mean, I think the Panthers are just a lost cause at this point. They still have Adam. I don't know who's better between Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. I would think Deontay Johnson, but I just know he does not have reliable hands, and that's why the Steelers traded him. I mean, I do think Bryce Young will be improved, and I do think Dave, Canales will improve the culture of that team, but they're still trash. Like, they don't have enough good players to be even a decent team this year. So I still think they'll come in last in that division. No chance.
Yeah, I agree. It's year one with a new coach. There's a lot of moving parts from the Panthers. I put them no chance.
I mean, I saw them play football in person. It was awful multiple times. So I'm good here. No chance. Absolutely no chance. Next up, we got the Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers, they definitely overexceeded expectations last year. I did not expect them to, after Tom Brady retired, to be one game better and actually advance in the playoffs the next year. But the Eagles just choke like that. Baker Mayfield's like one of those quarterbacks who he'll prey on the teams who are. It's like when they beat the Steelers in the playoffs a few years ago. The Steelers started like 11-0, and then they lost all their games heading into the playoffs. It's kind of like the Eagles last year. Like Baker Mayfield will seize the day on teams like that are on a sinking ship. He proved that he's still, a starter in this league. And he might be the best QB in that division. Like, I mean, he's got 2 playoff wins. Kirk only got 1, and Derek Carr's got none. And Bryce Young, I don't think has the weaponry to prove that he's the best QB in that division. So Baker might be the most reliable QB in that division. And he's got Mike Evans, who's definitely the best wide receiver in that division. So I think the Bucs are going to be mid. I want to say they still have no chance because I just know they can't, win. I do still think Todd Bowles is a terrible head coach too. It's kind of think he's like a Dennis Allen, like a really good D coordinator, but not a good head coach. This man literally had a timeout when the Lions took their last knee last year in the divisional playoffs and didn't use it and just let the clock run out. So he's kind of sorry for that. But yeah, they have no chance. Absolutely no chance.
I would say I wouldn't bet the house on the Bucs. Once again, their division comes into play here. I think they could be the second best team in their division after the Falcons. And they could maybe even compete with the Falcons because you just never know what you're going to get from Kirk Cousins on a week-to-week basis. That's my only thing. So this division is really a toss-up, in my opinion, between the Falcons, Saints, and Bucs. You don't know what you're going to get from each one on Sunday. So I'll put the Bucs in the wouldn't bet the house on the category. They still have some talent on offense, Rashad White, Mike Evans, and then Todd Bowles knows how to coach a defense up. So they'll be decent on paper.
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty decent. And after what I saw from them last year, I can't say they have no chance because, I mean, you would have told me earlier in the year that Baker Mayfield was going to win a playoff game against the Eagles, man. I would have thought you were crazy. I definitely would have thought you were crazy. Honestly, I would have said there's no shot he's even starting at that point in the year. And then he goes out and does it. So, I mean, that's just crazy. So I think that they definitely have a chance, especially in the division that they're in. But again, like Donald said, man, it's such a toss-up here. You never know on any given week what you're going to get from any of those teams in the same division, which is crazy. It's like the Falcons have had the weapons to be good over these past couple of years. They just decide that they're not going to use them. The Bucs have Baker Mayfield, and it's just kind of a mid-ish team. But, I mean, they still got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, too. So, I mean, they have weapons and Rashad White. So, I think of all the teams in this division, they have the most to get it done. So, I'm going to say that, yeah, I wouldn't bet the house on it. But it's possible they could even make a deep playoff run. But,
yeah. You know what? I'll put them in I wouldn't bet the house on it, too. I know the majority already ruled there. But, like, they're not head and shoulders worse than the Falcons. So, I mean, I think the Falcons maximize their talent. They're the best in that division. But I do think the Buccaneers probably have better like organizational fundamentals because they won the Super Bowl in recent years, and it looked like they still had some pride after Tom Brady retired, which I gave him credit for. So they still got champions on that roster like Levante David, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and that one corner I forget his name. Like they still have a pretty good, they still got a pretty good defense. Yeah, Winfield, yeah. So I got to give them their respect, but I obviously wouldn't bet the house on it. They're not talented enough.
For sure. Well, B, since you just finished that one, let's start with the next one, man. We got the New York Football Giants, Daniel Jones and Malik Neighbors, who I actually like a lot. So how are we feeling about the Giants this year?
I think you know where I'm going with this one. I've been watching Hard Knocks, and I saw Daniel Jones throw two picks in the preseason, bro. That's just not good. Like, I mean, I think they're trying to figure out a way to get rid of him, but apparently they did want Jaden Daniels, not apparently. Like, it's been shown in Hard Knocks. They wanted Jaden Daniels, and they lost Saquon, who was their best player. So, I mean, I know Malik Neighbors is going to be nice. And Brian Dable isn't a terrible coach. Like, I think they'll give him another chance after it implodes this year. But, I mean, they're just terrible. The Giants are not a good football team. They're a terrible organization.
Yeah, I got the no chance for the Giants. They have a lot of glaring deficiencies on their roster. Neighbors, I think, should be really good. But besides that, I mean, Brian Burns was a good pickup, but yeah, I just don't have much faith in the Giants with Daniel Jones at quarterback.
I mean, anytime you pick up Devin Singletary in the offseason, you're going to be Super Bowl or bust. I mean, I'm playing. So we're going to have to put him in no chance. I mean, you have to put him in no chance here, man. You guys already spelled it out. But I think Malik Neighbors can do some things, man. They can just figure out how to get him the ball consistently. So yeah, I think that they have a decent. I don't know. They might be able to do. No, they're going to come last. I'm not gonna lie. They're going to come last in their division either. So next up, we got the Eagles, man, and they're a little bit revamped. One team loses Saquon, another team gains him. Is that enough to be Super Bowl or bust?
Oh, they're absolutely Super Bowl or bust. They're not my personal pick to win the Super Bowl, but I mean, I feel like if they're not in the NFC Championship this year, like Nick Sirianni's probably going to get fired, and they're going to hire Belichick because I mean, with all the moves they're making, like I don't think they're going to stand for anything. That's honestly like losing the NFC Championship might still be pretty bad for them, even though there is like the Lions and the 49ers and teams like that. But they really put all their chips on the table, as they do every single offseason. Like they are just fiends in the month of March, as we've seen over the years. But I know Jason Kelsey retired still, so I do think they're going to get a little weaker at center. I think the tush push should still be effective, but not having number 62 snapping the ball, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a culture change, like for the team that they're going to have to deal with. But they still are stacked on paper, and it's like them and the Cowboys have rotated that division title for like so many years now. There's never been a back-to-back winner in that division since like the 90s, so I do think like the Eagles are in line to win it this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's Super Bowl or bust for the Eagles. The Saquon addition and then the defensive additions they made, getting Bryce Huff from the Jets, who I believe had like 10 or 11 sacks last year. The corners they drafted making improvements to their secondary. And they still got Jalen Carter, A.J. Brown, of course. The Eagles they're a loaded team, man. Like you said, B, if they don't make at least the NFC Championship, or probably they have to make the Super Bowl for Sirianni to keep his job, like you said, honestly. So it's a Super Bowl or bust for them this year.
I understand the Super Bowl or bust. I honestly do think that they can make the NFC Championship and then lose to like the 49ers, and it's not a huge deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I feel like they kind of still would have reached their ceiling for the most part.
Yeah,
but
I think he keeps it up, makes it.
Yeah. I think if they make the NFC Championship, they'd be all right. But my thing is the roster, like, because I feel like you really can only go all in on your roster like a certain amount of times in a certain given era. So like these years, you kind of have to maximize because you're gonna have to lose weapons eventually. Especially you're gonna have to pay more guys. Some guys are gonna have to stand out. I know the AJ Brown and Devontae Smith thing is probably not gonna be able to last too much longer. I think there's a lot of big egos there. I think one of them's got to be an alpha. So you're gonna have to take advantage of the years where you have them at wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. And then same thing with like Saquon and everybody that's there on the defensive end as well. All the talent's there. You got to make it happen now. So I do feel like it would be great to see them in the Super Bowl, but I think they can at least make the NFC Championship, and it's still not a failure of the season necessarily. So then next up, we got the Washington Commanders, man, which I actually think have a decent chance to do something in this division. They made a lot of additions as well, the biggest one being Jaden Daniels. So, B, how do you feel about the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, actually,
my bad. D, this is your team.
I forgot about that.
You're first.
Floor is yours.
Man, I mean, to be honest, I mean, there has been a change of guard in Washington, Jaden Daniels. I'm excited about it, but I wouldn't. They're in between the rebuilding stage, and I wouldn't bet the house on them. Like, quarterback play can change a lot for an organization, but at the same time, Washington still has a lot of holes on the roster. Offensive line, I think, may still be an issue. The secondary, and receiver as well. Outside of Terry McLaurin, we don't really have anybody proven that wide receiver. So still got Brian Robinson, but a couple people can only do but so much. So I may put Washington in that. I'm gonna put them in the rebuilding category because they still have some things to change. I think they'll be improved from last year. The coaching staff is a lot better, but at the same time, the roster that Dan Quinn took over was pretty awful. So they got to reboot. I think Jaden Daniels will be good, though, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. But no chance this year.
Okay. So yeah, I feel like no chance sounds like a negative connotation. They don't have a chance and really go far this year, but I do like what they're doing organizational wise. Like I like the new GM. I think he learned a few things from John Lynch in San Francisco. But I do think they're still like rebuilding for the future. But I do think it's a great thing that Dan Snyder is not sitting in the owner's box anymore, and they're actually like trying to do things to make the fans happy and the team have a better culture because it's long waited in Washington. I think they need to move to DC too. I think that should be on their bucket list. Just bring some energy to the team. You know what I mean? And I think Dan Quinn is a step up from Ron Rivera, because I think Ron Rivera was just washed as a head coach. Like, he was not meant to coach in 2020, 2023, 2024. For whatever reason, Commanders have always struggled against the Giants, even when the Giants are worse. But it's a new team now, so maybe they'll win those games. I do think they could beat Dallas once this year. I'm interested to see how they do against them in both their games, because Dak usually gets his MVP stats from playing the Giants and Commanders twice a year. It's like 16 of his 36 touchdowns last year, I think. So I think you guys will definitely be an improved team from last year, but I still think there's ways to go here.
B, one of the main things I was going to talk about here is, the different weapons and stuff like that. But, the big thing for me is they got to move the team, man. I think FedEx Field is just it ain't it, bro. You're in the middle of a parking lot that you share with a community center and in a circus when the circus is in town. So I feel like you gotta move. It looks like they're moving to the University of Maryland. I looked that up on Google. That's an upgrade for sure. The facilities aren't good enough, and I mean, you can't show up as a football player and see a circus next door and be like, "This is motivating." I got to get a win this. No, not at all. But I like what they're doing. They made a lot of good moves. Donald, do you change your mind at all if Brandon Ayuk comes to the team? Because now with Jahan Dotson getting moved, was that a day or two ago? It just leaves an open spot. It looks like they're trying to clear up some space for somebody. You guys were already kind of lacking in the wide receiver department, but now for you to move on from somebody, I mean, I feel like BA has a really good chance of coming here. Does that change your answer at all?
I would put them in, wouldn't bet the house on it if that's the case, because it's still that's a great addition, a great pickup, but then at the same time, there's still question marks on defense. The offense can only be as good as your defense. And still, the offensive line would be a little bit of a concern for me, but that would help things a lot. That would help things a lot. I would just put them in, wouldn't bet the house on it, though, because you still got the Eagles in the division. We historically struggle against Dallas, just at least in my lifetime being a fan. So, and then just looking at our schedule and the rest of the NFC, I think I forget who we played, but I think we play the Ravens, the Steelers, the Browns. Like we got some tough games. We got the Bengals on a Monday night, so there's a tough schedule Washington has as well. So I just wouldn't bet the house on it.
I don't know. I do think there's a little bit of a changing of the guard happening here between the Commanders and the Cowboys, as you see one team clearly getting better and the other one clearly getting worse. So just something to watch out for going forward. Next up, speaking of the devil, we have the Dallas Cowboys. I do not need to go first. This is not my team anymore. B, talk to me. How do you want
to go first? But I see what you're wearing right now, and just seems like you maybe left Dallas. So here's the thing about Dallas is Jerry said he was going all in, and I mean he might need to get checked out for CTE based on the offseason he has. He can't fire himself, but I mean he is the weak link in Dallas right now. I think it's evident at this point. Like, I don't know, Stevens. Sometimes when you're a responsible son, you got to tell your pops when he's getting old to maybe hand the keys over. But I think we're getting there with Jerry Jones, because I do not know how this offseason was all in, quote unquote, watching their next door neighbors in the division, Eagles, go as hard as they did this offseason, and watch the Commanders clearly, get better and take their defensive coordinator to be head coach of their team. And they just did nothing. I mean, they brought back Ezekiel Elliott. That's their starting running back this year. Like, the dude's washed, and he's their starting running back. I do think for fantasy purposes, I don't know if Dak might throw interceptions this year, but he's probably going to throw for a lot of yards. And CeeDee Lamb's, even though he's holding out right now, when he does get back, he's probably going to, lead the league in receiving, because they are not going to be running the ball at all. And Mike McCarthy probably has to just be distraught at this point, because he's on a 1-year contract. And like, if he doesn't, he's not going to get re-signed if they don't, do anything this year, but he's not in any position to improve this year. And honestly, I'm interested to see what they do with Dak after the year, because he's a free agent after this year. I mean, I do think the house could come down for Dallas, and they could blow it all up if this is not a good year, because it's like you can't go forward with this team if you don't see improvements. And Zach Martin might retire after this year. Like, the future is bleak unless they really shock the world this year and do well. But I'm not disrespectful enough to put him in that bottom category, but I wouldn't bet the house on it with Dallas.
I agree. I wouldn't bet the house on it with Dallas either. They still got Dakota Prescott at quarterback. No real improvements offensively. They drafted an offensive lineman. I think their offensive line will be decent. CeeDee Lamb, they got to get that figured out, because they have nobody on the perimeter outside of CeeDee Lamb. Defensively, I think Deron Bland just got hurt. They said he's out 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know when Trayvon Diggs will be back. Stephon Gilmore is in Minnesota, so it's really just Micah Parsons right now. So Dallas has a lot of question marks, as you already mentioned, B. So I just wouldn't bet the house on them, especially after that embarrassment they had in the first round of the playoffs too against the Packers. And it looks like the overall NFC got better in other divisions. So I wouldn't bet the house on the Cowboys.
Dallas is one of those teams where like they could go 18-0 and it would mean nothing to me. Like nothing at all. Like because I know that very next week they're gonna lose in the playoffs, bro. Like their guys are not gonna show up. Like Dakota is one issue, but then you got Micah Parsons, man, who I think in the last couple of years he's had great starts to the season. He had 11 tackles or 11 sacks in the first 11 games. I think it was 2 years ago, and then for the rest of the 7 games, he had 2 sacks. Like, bro, he completely falls off a cliff and goes missing when they need him most. Same thing with Dakota Prescott. And then now what is their receiving core outside of CeeDee Lamb? It's CeeDee Lamb and then Brandon Cooks, who at this point himself is Cook. So it's like I just Jake Ferguson is solid. I mean, but that's your number 2? That's your number 2 the weapon on your team, and then bringing Ezekiel Elliott back with Rico Dowdle as the backup, Stephon Gilmore gone. This is like, bro, what is this team? Like right now, legitimately, the Lions are better than them. The Eagles are better than them. The Packers are better than them. I think the Bears have a good chance to be better than them. And then there's the second sect of teams in the NFC that's like the Rams. I mean, no, the 49ers are still better than them too. Let me put that in there too. And then there's the second sect of teams like the Rams that might be better than them. We don't really know. And then there's the Seahawks that might be able to beat them on any given day. Like there's other teams that like they might not be better than them clearly, but if they went head to head in a playoff matchup, you don't really know who's going to come out on top. So the Cowboys are really in trouble here, in my opinion. And especially going forward, their future is just not bright. So I definitely wouldn't bet the house on it. They have a good chance to come in second in their division still. And they'll make the playoffs, but will they get a playoff win? Yet to be seen. So we shall see. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals, man. Really interesting team. A lot of great weapons around the field. I think Kyler Murray is one of my favorite QBs this year, especially in fantasy. I think he has a great opportunity to be really good this year. B, what do you think?
I completely agree with you, especially with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be a beast. Receivers are really nowadays coming in the NFL and just taking the league by storm. I expect him to do the same thing. However, I still don't really trust the rest of their roster. I think they could win a couple more games. I think that division could be more competitive this year. But, I mean, just if you look at the other 3 teams in that division, they have no chance this year. Like, they just aren't going to do enough. They probably will come in last in that division still.
Yeah, I agree. The Cardinals, I think they'll be very improved this year when Kyler Murray got back at the end of the year last year. I think they beat the Eagles in Philly one of those games. They added Marvin Harrison. I think Trey McBride will be very solid for them. He had a good rapport with Kyler Murray when he got back. James Conner, he's always been a touchdown machine since he's been in Arizona. His problem has been his health. I don't know if they made any improvements to their defense. I know their defense was kind of an issue, but I think at minimum Kyler Murray back – they're like in between that wouldn't bet the house, but no chance rebuilding. But they're in the tough division as well. So I would say they're still rebuilding.
I'm going to go ahead and put them in rebuilding. But, yeah, I think that there's weapons all over the field. I think Kyler Murray has a really good opportunity to kind of establish himself as an elite QB again. I haven't heard a lot of Call of Duty stuff about him in the offseason, which is always good. I feel like he might be studying the playbook for once. As a professional football player, he might be doing his job. I think it's shocking. But, yeah, I think that the weapons are everywhere. Zay Jones is out for a couple weeks. So, I mean, go ahead and pick up Michael Wilson if you can, man, if he's on your waivers. So, next up, we have the L.A. Rams. They have Puka Nacua, obviously, who's a popular pick in fantasy this year. B, do you think that's going to translate onto the field?
Oh, yeah, Puka will be an absolute beast. And if Cooper Kupp's healthy, he should be – that might be the strongest receiving core in the league. However, AD did just retire last year, so I don't think their defense is going to be that good. They did lose the defensive coordinator to the head coach of the Falcons. So the defense could be a problem potentially, but I know Sean McVay is a really good coach, and he knows how to cook up an offense. And I mean, we might need to think, is Matthew Stafford the best QB in the NFC? Like, I know the NFC is significantly a weaker QB conference than the AFC, and every letter in the word significantly in size 48 caps, bro. Like, significantly drop off from AFC to NFC in terms of QB play. But Matthew Stafford is the only one with a ring in this conference, and it's not too far removed. However, I would have to put him in. I wouldn't bet the house on it. There just isn't enough talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think to have a deep playoff run this year. I think they're really well coached, and they could keep things interesting. And I almost want to say deep playoff run is the potential, but I can't head shoulders say they're better than the Cowboys, so I wouldn't bet the house on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet the house on the Rams either. As you already mentioned, I have some questions about their defense. Offensively, they'll be fine. You still got Sean McVay, as you said. As long as Cooper Kupp's healthy, and then you got Puka Nacua in the second season, Kyron Williams. So the Rams do have a solid offense, but I just have some questions about their defense. They do have a good coaching staff and good quarterback play. So I wouldn't bet the house on them. They can always surprise some teams, but I don't think they have the talent to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And honestly, I paid too much attention to this team's offense and not enough on their defense. I think, B, you're completely right. They did lose Aaron Donald, and I completely forgot about that. And I can't really name too many other standouts defensively on this team. Shout out Josh Wallace. But if he gets some time on the field, man, I'll be a whole Rams fan. I'm not gonna lie. But I think that defensively this team leaves a lot to be desired. But yeah, I think out in this division, it's like it's Goff, it's Hurts, it's Stafford, and then Dakota. So I do think Stafford is probably the best QB out of this group. So yeah, I think that they're always going to have a chance, especially with receiving core and with the running game they have with Kyron Williams. They always seem to be dynamic on the offensive side of the ball, so it's going to give them some chance in some games. But ultimately, the defense has to be up to par too, and I don't know if it is as currently constructed. Next up, this is one team where I feel like we can just go ahead and knock this out right now. They are Super Bowl or bust. I think they are the epitome of Super Bowl or bust. So, B, talk to me. How do you feel about the 49ers this year?
I'm just interested to see whether they have Ayuk on the field or not. But either way, I still think even if they don't have Ayuk, you got Kittle, you got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, you got Debo. You still got Trent Williams blocking as long as they work out that contract situation. And their defense is stacked. You still got Bosa, Fred Warner. They're going to get Hufanga back. They lost Eric Armstead, but he was already kind of injury prone, so I don't really think it's a big loss. I think they had a fine offseason other than these tough negotiations they're having. I mean, they still should, on paper, be the best team in the NFC. I don't know if they can get the number one seed 2 years in a row because that is hard, but I mean, and their division is a little tougher, but there's still no way they're not winning that division unless their roster gets depleted because they're too stacked. And yeah, absolutely Super Bowl or bust because they're gonna have to lose players soon because they're paying so many people. And I think this is probably gonna be Debo and Ayuk's last year together. So I mean, if they do play together this year, so because they're running Debo into the ground by treating him like a running back and a wide receiver. So I think players will maybe start to decline who are getting a little up there in age. Could be Trent Williams last year. So they really got to get it done this year, and I think they have the most pressure out of any team. And I think other than the Chiefs, I'd say the Ravens and Niners across the NFL the most pressure to get it done this very year, but especially the Niners.
I agree. It's Super Bowl or bust for San Francisco. I feel like it's been like that these last 4 to 5 years for them. They lost 2 Super Bowls. I believe they lost 1 or 2 NFC championship games. Like they've been right there at the doorstep each year. So I feel like if there was a time for them to break through, it would have to be this year because, as you already mentioned, B, they have a lot of guys that are due for a new contract. You still got Brock Purdy on his rookie deal, but then that's probably around the corner soon. Yeah, they got to pay him. George Kittle isn't getting any younger. He had a great season last year, but as you mentioned, him and Debo with injuries sometimes because of how physical they play. So the Niners, they have to get it done sooner rather than later because the NFC around them is getting better and teams are getting younger. Especially at other positions. So I feel like it's now or never for San Fran.
Bro, it's like if they make another Super Bowl and lose again, or like they make it to the NFC Championship and lose again, it's just like, man, like how many of those L's can you consistently take and then continue to the next year be like, we can do this? Like at a certain point, it starts to just weigh on you and be like, I don't know if we can do this anymore. Like I might need to go somewhere else, et cetera. So. Again, man, this is the year. CMC had his healthiest season last season. We'll see if they can replicate that. I mean, that's a lot to ask for. I'm not gonna lie, for a guy that has that much workload to be healthy all season. And then the same thing with Debo, man. It seems like he's gonna consistently have some sort of injury going on. But if he can stay healthy, then we'll have to see. But last but not least, guys, we got the Seattle Seahawks. How do you feel about this team, B?
I'm going to put them in the wouldn't bet the house on it category because they are talented. Like they got DK and Tyler Lockett. It's been a true receiving core. It's it's not as good as Godwin Evans and definitely not as good as Puka and Cooper, but it's very consistent, very respectable receiving core. And the Seahawks are just a really good organization if you think about it. Like they throughout, I'd say from like 2004 and on, they've been a pretty consistent organization. Like they had a couple dips here and there, but it's going to be interesting to see, with Pete Carroll not there anymore, what kind of energy Mike McDonald's going to bring to the team. I know he coaches defense. That's his dominant side of the ball. I think they'll have a good defense, but still, and nothing against Geno Smith. The resurrection he's had in his career is remarkable, but at the same time, you look at that division, he's not as good as Matthew Stafford. He's not as good as Brock Purdy, and he's not as good as Kyler Murray. So they got the worst QB in the division, and he's not even as good as guys like Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, and probably not even as good as Derek Carr. So it's like I hate to categorize him as a weak link because he can play really well at times, but you're not winning the championship or really going far with Geno Smith just because there's too many better players. So I got to put him in I wouldn't bet the house on it.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't bet the house on Seattle, but they are very talented. They have a great secondary. They got Devon Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen in that corner. Offensively, they still have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Kenneth Walker has been solid. He's definitely had solid production since coming into the league. DK Metcalf, as you mentioned. I think Mike McDonald was a good hire for them after Pete Carroll retired. I think their defense may be able to be even better than they were last year, to be honest. But also at the same time, as you mentioned, being QB play is what it comes down to. And I think out of their division, they have probably like the fourth best quarterback in Geno Smith. So I wouldn't bet the house on them just because of division and QB circumstances, but it's not to say they aren't a talented team.
I don't know, man. The Seahawks to me are kind of like the Steelers of the NFC. Like they're just so solid. Like I feel like they're gonna always at least be 500, and then at best case scenario, they can win you like 11 games in a season or 12 right now. I think that they really are gonna go as far as I almost said Drew Lock, Geno Smith. They're gonna go as far as Geno Smith can take them. And then I feel like DK Metcalf can honestly take a leap here. I don't know if it's a new coaching staff or new offensive coordinator that they got this year?
New coaching staff, whole new coaching staff.
Yeah. Coaching staff. So I feel like they've been talking up Kenneth Walker in training camp, just talking about how he's going to probably be a 3-down workhorse, probably get more receiving work. So I feel like they're going to use Kenneth Walker a little bit different, and then maybe prioritize DK Metcalf a little bit here. Tyler Lockett's getting a little bit older, but it's like they already have their backup plans. Like they got Zach Charbonnet already kind of sitting there. He's kind of getting reps. He had a solid year last year. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba is just going to continue to get more and more targets as well. So they got guys that are already solid, and they're kind of building on their next regime as well at the same time. So big thing for them, man, is what the hell they're going to do at QB, especially if Geno doesn't look like what he did. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like they're going to have to figure that out longer term. But, I mean, for right now, I think it works. You got enough weapons to kind of make it work for right now.
And that's an unbelievable comparison. They are definitely the NFC version of the Steelers, man. They're just like too good of an organization to be cheeks, but they're obviously they're not going to win a playoff game this year.
Yeah, now I haven't heard anybody say that before, but just looking at them, I feel like that's just the easiest comparison I can make. They're just solid, a good organization. Like they're not gonna be awful, like typically. So, yeah. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Nah.
All righty, let's do it for our preseason rankings, fellas. We got 2 more weeks until the season starts fully. So, we're getting excited here. We had a couple more episodes to knock out, but hope you guys like the episode, man. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that type of stuff. Follow us on the socials at the God Next Podcast, and we will catch you guys on our next episode.